Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I am Joey Francis, your life, love, and relationship coach. Thank you so much for joining me. This week, I want to talk about breakups again, but more specifically, I want to talk about what happens after the breakup. When everyone has advice for you, and a lot of that advice usually makes sense, but somehow you still don't feel very good. Because this is something I think we need to be a little bit more honest about. And I am 100% including myself in this conversation too, because I have said it before. I have told people after a breakup to block the person, delete the pictures, stop checking social media, stop rereading old messages, stop asking friends what they're doing. Stop looking for signs in every post, every song, every profile picture, every tiny little thing that probably means nothing, but it feels like it means everything when you are hurt. And to be clear, I still believe all of that. I still believe distance help. I still believe no contact can be useful. I still believe blocking someone can be the healthiest thing you do, especially if every time you see their name, your whole body reacts. That does not mean you're childish. That does not mean you are immature. It means you know yourself well enough to understand that access is something alive that needs space to calm down. But here's the part that does not get talked about enough. Blocking somebody removes access. It does not remove attachment. And I think that's where a lot of people get frustrated with themselves after a breakup. They do the logical thing. They stop texting. They stop checking. They remove the pictures. They avoid the places. They follow all the advice that sounds right on paper. And then they sit there wondering why they still feel awful. They start thinking, I did everything I was supposed to do. Why do I still miss them? Why am I still angry? Why am I still sad? Why do I still want them to understand what they did? Why does part of me feel like I am waiting for something? The answer is that logic can help you create distance, but logic does not automatically process grief. Logic can be useful because it can interrupt the behaviors that keep reopening the wound. It can help you put the phone down when you want to send that midnight text. It can remind you that checking their Instagram story just to see if they look happy without you is probably going to ruin your day. It could even stop you from doing something completely stupid like driving past their house and pretending you just happen to be in the neighborhood. And for God's sake, please do not do that. That is not romance. That is how true crime documentaries start. So yes, logic has a place. It can protect you from acting on the pain. It can stop you from feeding the attachment in the obvious ways. But logic does not automatically heal the pain itself. That is the missing piece. A breakup is still a loss, even when you know it had to happen. And I think that's where people get confused because they assume that if the decision was right, it should somehow hurt less. But that is not how feelings work. You can know deep down inside that the relationship could not continue and still miss the person, still feel the absence, still grieve the life you thought you were building. And that loss becomes even more confusing when the person wasn't horrible, because I think a lot of people want the breakup to be clean. They want the other person to be bad enough that ending makes complete sense. They want a simple story. They want to be able to say, they cheated, or they lied, they betrayed me, or they were really terrible. And sometimes that is the story. Sometimes the person was really awful for you. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is leave, block, delete, and never look back. But unfortunately, sometimes the story is a lot more complicated than that. Sometimes they weren't a monster. They may have been kind in certain ways. They may have loved you the best way they knew how. They may have been beautiful moments, real laughter, genuine care, and memories you can't just throw away because the relationship ended. And that makes it harder because your mind keeps going back to the good parts. It reminds you of the night they held you, the time they showed up, the conversation that made you feel close, or the way they looked at you when things were good. And because those moments were real, part of you starts questioning whether the ending should be real too. That is where people get stuck. They think the relationship has to be all bad for the breakup to be valid. And it does not. The person may actually be decent. They may have good qualities. They may have meant well in a lot of ways. But someone meaning well does not mean they are right for your life. And someone having good qualities does not mean the relationship is healthy enough to continue. A person can have a good heart and still not know how to meet you. They can care about you and still keep hurting you in the same places. They can love you and still be emotionally unavailable, inconsistent, avoidant, immature, incompatible, or unable to build the kind of relationship you are trying to build. And when that happens, letting go becomes very difficult because there is no obvious villain. There's just pain and disappointment, and the sadness of realizing that love by itself does not automatically create a life that works. And I mean, I know because I continuously try to put this into your heads about my blueprint method. This is a hard thing to accept because when you love someone, you want love to be enough. You want the effort to mean it will work. You want the history to mean it deserves more time. You want the good moments to somehow cancel out the repeated hurt. You want the version of them you saw in the beautiful moments to become the version you can actually build a life with. But love does not automatically create alignment. It does not automatically create emotional availability, consistency, communication, maturity, or a future that both people can actually live inside. So when the relationship ends, you are grieving more than the person. You are grieving the version of the relationship you kept hoping it would become. You are grieving the conversation that never went the way you needed them to go, the effort you put in, the patience you had, and the future you pictured. You are grieving the version of them you saw in the good moments, the version that made you think, this is why I stay. This is why I keep trying. I know that this person is in there somewhere. And then the relationship ends and you are left holding all of that. So someone online says, block them. And again, that may be good advice. But now what? What do you do with everything still sitting inside you? That is the part we need to talk about. Because after a breakup, the thing keeping you attached is not always hope. You may not even want the relationship anymore. You may know going back would put you right back into the same cycle, having the same conversations, asking for the same things, and feeling the same kind of alone. But even when you know all of that, there can still be a part of you waiting for something. And usually, what are you waiting for is acknowledgement. You want them to understand how hard you tried. You want them to admit they hurt you. You want them to recognize that you were patient, that you loved them, that you carried more than they realized, and that you were not crazy for feeling the way you felt. Sometimes you were not waiting for them to come back. You were waiting for them to finally understand what they cost you. And they probably never will. Maybe they do not have the self-awareness. Maybe they don't have the emotional maturity. I mean, if they did, it probably wouldn't have ended. Maybe they have already rewritten the relationship in their own head in a way that makes them feel better. Maybe their version of the story makes you the problem because that is easier for them to live with. And that is painful. But you cannot make your healing dependent on the emotional maturity of the person you're healing from. I know that sounds simple, and I know it is not in reality. People online love to say things like, take your power back. And sometimes it sounds nice, but means absolutely nothing. So let's try to make it practical. Ask yourself, what sentence are you still waiting for them to say? Because a lot of the time, there's a very specific sentence your heart is waiting for. It might be an apology. It might be them finally admitting that you tried. It might be them saying they understand why you felt alone. Or it might be something as simple as, you were not wrong for needing what you needed. Whatever the sentence is, that might be the hook. That might be the thing keeping part of you tied to them. You are not only missing them, you are waiting for them to complete something emotionally that they may never be capable of completing, or maybe never even want to. So once you find the sentence, say it to yourself. And yes, I know that might feel strange. You might feel ridiculous sitting in a room talking out loud to yourself. But let's be honest. Most of us have done far more ridiculous things in the name of love. Saying something honest to yourself is probably not the worst thing in the world. Give yourself the acknowledgement you keep. Tell yourself the truth. Tell yourself that you tried. Tell yourself that your love was real. Tell yourself that some of the relationship was beautiful and some of it hurt. Let both of those things exist without trying to force the story into one simple category. Your pain is real even if they never understood it. Your effort was real even if they never recognized it. Your love was real even if they never appreciated it the way you hoped they would. You do not need them to sign a receipt for what you gave. And I understand why we want that receipt. We want to be seen. We want to be the person, or we want the person who hurt us to understand the damage, because we think that if they finally understood it, maybe it'll be easier to carry. And sometimes a real apology does help. Sometimes two mature people can sit down and have an honest conversation. Sometimes someone can say, I see it now. I hurt you. I am sorry. And if that happens, beautiful. That can be very healing. But majority of people never get that conversation. They never get the apology, the acknowledgement, or the ending that feels clean. So at some point, you have to create some emotional completion for yourself. One way to do that is writing. And I know the word journaling can make people roll their eyes. I get it. It can sound soft. It can sound like one of those things people say when they don't know what else to say. But writing can help because it takes the conversation that keeps spinning in your head and puts it somewhere outside of you. And I know from experience using journaling that making a physical record of something going on in my head took it out of my head. And I stopped thinking about it as much as I was. So write the letter you wish you could send. And don't worry about making it sound mature, polished, or emotionally healthy. That's not the point. The point is to be honest. Tell the truth about what happened from your side. Talk about the moments that hurt you, the effort you feel went unnoticed, the things you kept swallowing, and the parts of the relationship that still sit in your chest. Let it be messy. Let it sound angry if you're angry. Let it sound sad if you're sad. This letter is not for them. It is a part of you that has been carrying the conversation alone. And when you are done, do not send it. That is very important. The point is not to restart the conversation. The point is to let the truth leave your body without handing it back to the person. Some conversations are not meant to be sent. They're meant to be released. And if you want to take that even further, write 3 different letters, each one with a different purpose. The first letter is where you let yourself be honest about the pain. You're not trying to be fair, balanced, or impressive. You are getting the hurt out of your head and onto the page, especially the things you never felt safe enough to say out loud. The second letter, that's about the good things that existed. This one matters because healing does not require you to lie. You do not have to pretend that they were awful if they were not. You can admit that there were good moments, that you love them, and that certain memories still matter to you. The third letter is the one that tells the whole truth. This is where you stop trying to focus the relationship into one clean category. It was something that mattered, and it was also something that could not continue. It had real moments and it had real problems. It gave you memories, and it also showed you why you couldn't stay. That kind of honesty helps you stop fighting with yourself. Because the good parts were real. The ending was real too, though. That's one of the hardest truths to accept after a breakup. We think if the good parts were real, maybe the relationship should have lasted. And we think if the relationship had to end, maybe the good parts were fake. But that's not how life works. Something can be meaningful and still not be sustainable. Something can be real and still not be right for your future. There's a strange kind of honesty that comes after a breakup when you finally allow the whole truth to exist. You might miss them. You might still love parts of them. You might respect them as a person. And still, when you look at the relationship clearly, you know going back would place you right back into something that was already hurting you. That is emotional maturity. It is much easier to make them the villain. The story becomes simple. Your friends understand it faster. Your mind has less to argue with. But sometimes the truth is more complicated than that. Sometimes there were a real person with real qualities, real flaws, real love, real limitations, and the relationship still reached its end. The more honest you can be about the whole truth, the less you have to fight with yourself. Now, there is another exercise that can help too. It may sound strange, but stay with me. And I think I've mentioned it in a previous episode. Take an empty chair and put it in front of you. Imagine your ex sitting there, and then say what you need to say. And here's the thing, if you have a friend who you trust, who you can be 100% open and honest with, you can even put them into the chair and have them play the role of your ex. Maybe there is anger there. Maybe there is sadness. Maybe there's still love. And maybe that annoys you because you wish the love would just disappear already. Whatever is still taking up space inside you, give it somewhere to go. Say it to the chair instead of sending it to the person. Because some of the pain we carry after a breakup is trapped expression. It's the conversation we never had. It's the sentence we swallowed. It's the anger we tried to make look calm. It is the grief we kept intellectualizing because we wanted to seem strong. And sometimes the body needs release. This does not mean you contact them. In fact, that is the whole point. You are not texting them. You are not calling them. You are not showing up at their house. You are giving the emotion somewhere to go without giving the person access to you again. There's a difference between expressing your feelings and handing your feelings back to the person who hurt you. The chair is not for them. The chair is for you. It gives your nervous system a way to say what it has been holding. And when you are done, take a breath, sit for a moment, let your body settle. Maybe write down what came up. Maybe go for a walk, drink some water. And I know all these things sound basic, but sometimes basic is exactly what you need after a wave of emotion moves through you. And listen, if what comes up feels too big or too overwhelming or connected to trauma, then get proper support. Talk to a therapist, talk to someone trained. Even talk to someone you trust, a good friend, family. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes the wound is bigger than a podcast, a notebook, or an empty chair. And that does not mean you are broken. It means you are human and you need help carrying something heavy. But for a lot of people, these exercises can help move something. They can help you stop carrying every unsaid thing inside your body. Because that's what happens after a breakup. People carry the relationship inside them long after the relationship is over. The last conversation stays there. The unanswered questions stay there. The unfairness stays there. The hope that maybe one day the other person will understand stays there. And until you process that, logic will only take you so far. You can block them and still be attached. You can delete the messages and still be emotionally waiting. You can stop talking to them and still have an entire relationship with them inside your head. And this is where it can become dangerous, because when those feelings do not have somewhere to go, people often look for another person to hold them. That is where boundaries come in. I'm not going to go all the way into rebounds today, because it's a whole conversation by itself. In fact, it's probably going to be next week's topic. But it connects directly to this. A lot of rebounds happen because people don't know what to do with the pain after a breakup. They're not always looking for the same love. Sometimes they're looking for relief. They want to feel wanted again. They want to feel attractive again. They want the silence to stop being so loud. They want someone new to say things their ex never said, or made them feel something their ex stopped making them feel. And when that attention shows up, it can feel like medicine. And of course, it feels good. If you've been emotionally starving, the first person who feeds you, it's going to feel special. But that does not mean they are right for you. It may only mean they are touching the part of you that is hungry. That is where you have to be careful, because the new person can become proof that you're still attractive, proof that you're still lovable, proof that your ex did not destroy you, proof that someone else can want you. And for a little while, that proof feels amazing. But proof is not the same thing as compatibility. Attention is not the same thing as love. Relief is not the same thing as healing. And eventually, that high wears off. The attention becomes normal, the loneliness calms down, your ego gets some air again, and then you're left with the actual person in front of you. And once that high wears off, you eventually have to look at them clearly and be honest about what's really there. Are you drawn to who they are, or are you drawn to the fact they make the pain quieter? Do your lives actually align? Is there something real to build, or were they simply close enough to the wound at the moment when you needed relief? That is why it's so important to process your feelings before you hand them to someone else. The next person deserves to meet you as clearly as possible. They should not have to compete with your ex, repair what your ex damaged, or prove your worth back to you. That is work you have to begin before you bring someone else into the picture. And they deserve that too. And you deserve that too. You deserve to know that when you choose someone, you are choosing them because they fit your life, your values, your future, and your heart. You deserve to know that they are not just standing close to the wound at the moment when you needed relief. So yes, use logic after a breakup. Please just use logic in general. Block them if you need to. Delete them if you need to. Stop checking their page if you already know it ruins your day. Stop asking mutual friends questions when you are not emotionally ready for the answer. Stop calling it closure when really you are just looking for one more reason to stay connected. Use logic. But understand what logic is there for. Logic protects the wound. Emotional processing heals it. And healing means you eventually have to feel the thing you keep trying to outrun. You have to grieve the good parts and accept the ending without needing them to validate your pain before you allow yourself to move forward. You have to stop believing that healing only begins when they finally understand what they did, because they may never understand. And if they do, you still have to live your life. So ask yourself what sentence you are still waiting for. Say it to yourself. Write the letter. Write all three if you have to. Put the chair down and speak the truth into the room. Let the emotions move without pulling yourself back into the relationship. And then remind yourself of the full truth. A person does not have to become a villain for the ending to make sense. They may have mattered deeply to you. The relationship may have shaped you, taught you, and given you memories you will always carry, but none of that means it was meant to continue. Sometimes the most honest ending is the one where nobody has to be evil for the relationship to be over. That is not weakness, that is honesty. And maybe that is what healing really is. It's not pretending it did not hurt. It's not pretending they did not matter. It's not pretending you are fine because you blocked a number and deleted some pictures. Healing is when you can call or when you can tell the whole truth without needing to go back. It is when you can look at the relationship and say, that mattered to me. It hurt me. It ended. And now I have to keep living my life without dragging the unfinished parts of that relationship into everything that comes next. That is where you begin again. And on that note, I just want to say thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate you being here with me and supporting me and sharing this with your friends and family. You should be sharing this with your friends or family. And I know I don't think I've ever said it before, but if this is something that you feel or something that hits you, feel free to subscribe and follow me and, come along with this journey. If this episode hits something in you, don't run with it. Sit with it, write about it, talk about it, say the things you keep holding into your chest. And if you need to reach out to me, you want to ask me questions and such, go to joeyfrancis.com. That's JoeyFrances.com. And you can send me a message there and ask me a question. You can also check out my books, all three of them. Some good Amazon links there. And there's other links to this podcast if you're listening to this and maybe want to watch it on YouTube or vice versa. But anyways, again, thank you. And for this week, remember this. Getting them out of your phone is a start. Getting them out of your emotional system takes honesty. And before you give your pain to someone new, make sure you have done the work of listening to what it is trying to tell you. Until next time.